take no more games.
You on that one, my man.
Okay. Wednesday edition of the After Show. Got Week of Justice with it. Week over here on the East Coast.
And justice over here on the west coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is Wednesday's child is full of whoa Wednesdays. Yeah. Even more so now in Trump America. Hey, Wink, how are you doing?
Oh, man, yeah. Yeah, it is, what do we got? 38 degrees and kind of overcast out there. But your typical late March, early April kind of day. Reminder, get in the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And as fates would have it, Networks Radio is, of course, in need of some equipment and for backup. And they call that redundancy in the biz. But without it, we can't run the station. It's really rough. And some software, too, as well. So to achieve those ends, there are the donate contribute buttons just to the left of the chat room link. Isn't that just daft how that occurred? It's just amazing. And thank you for your generosity. All kidding aside, it's really. And just as a reminder, after show pods can be had fairly quickly during the day by way of Spreaker. We call that the raw data file, and then the perfected file, the one where you can actually sit down and have a brandy with it. The raw data file, you want to have like some rye. You got to have rye with it.
Yep.
Finished product, that's brandy time.
Absolutely.
But that will be had later by way of Podbean, iTunes, TuneIn, et cetera, et cetera. That little stupid thing with a small little I, letter I, and then there's a like heart shape.
Yeah.
If you choose to do it there, well, we're not going to stop you.
Right.
But we might want to discourage you. But whatever platform you have, you're probably going to get the pods right there. So thank you for doing that. Well, Wink, here along the banks of the Rogue River. Did I already say that already? No. Have I said?
No.
Okay, good. I'm just fairly discombobulated. There's so much going on, Wink. Is it still 2017?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's still 2017.
It feels like 100 years from now.
It does.
Man. Well, currently it's 48 degrees here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon. Rain is expected here. The local weather stations that people have in there. I'm linked up to a network of local weather stations that people have on their properties, whether it be out in the country, here in town, and then it gets routed through the Weather Underground, and then we get these forecasts.
Yeah.
And so they're saying rain possible at 11:45, and I think it's going to be sooner than that. So I'm just saying.
Yep.
Just saying. At least where I'm at. So, and looks like we'll have some pretty good steady rain throughout the day, and I'm hoping that doesn't stop the crew from coming out here and taking away this thorny bush that I have that's been impaling small children as they ride by on their bicycles.
Right.
Can't have that. Just cannot have that. I'm not of that type of. I don't have a Gran Torino.
Right.
In the driveway. Okay, let's just put it that way. No Gran Torino for me. I don't have that kind of attitude. Though I have to admit there are some in town that do. Any town, isn't that true, Wink?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You always got some. I don't know. You always got 1 or 10. Never know. Well, and I guess we're going to have some rain for the next couple of days, and then it looks, God, I'm not superstitious. I'm not into knocking on wood or, rally caps and all that stuff. But we're supposed to have like a steady, maybe 5 days of no rain. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. And knowing that in today's, or I don't know, just today, in the uncertain existence that I'm sorry, I just had to turn that off, but I had to reach for it. The uncertain existence that we are existing in. It may rain when
Right.
it's supposed to be dry. Okay, I mean, it's a psychological pain that we have to live in. Wink. You never know when you're going to eat or be eaten.
Right.
It's kind of like business in a way. Maybe that's maybe that's why it's so offensive. Government being run like business, because we like to think that government is there, for our benefit.
Right.
An agreement among fellows and gals to say we've got some common concerns and we are consolidating our resources and our efforts, our spirit and our minds in which to achieve these things, instead of, boy, can I stab somebody in the back and take what they got?
Right.
I don't know. I don't like government run like business, because business is I'm going to stab somebody in the back and take what they got, as long as I can get away with it. The idea is as long as I don't get caught, right? And sure, that exists in government, but that sort of mindset, it exists anywhere. But I'm a romantic. I like to think that government, the mindset there is, but for the greater good. Ask not what my country can do for me, but what I can do for my country. I always thought that was a noble behavior. I don't know. Don't you, Wink?
Oh, hell yeah.
Instead of like, those old people that cross the street, they can't shovel their sidewalks. Too bad. Let them freeze to death. That's what so appalls me about Gorsuch. I just love the fact. I mean, we went over this story already, and it was mentioned between Joan and David earlier about the frozen trucker case.
Yep.
Gorsuch says that, of course, the company can fire the guy for trying to save his life because his loyalty should be to the company and not to himself.
There you go.
That might be taking the idea of the team concept a little too far, but it's also a kind of business attitude, right? He is but a mere cog that can be replaced. If he doesn't want to be replaced, he could have stayed there, died, and been replaced. I just don't understand it. David actually touched upon what I think is really the case, is that it is something like in a mock trial. Well, for instance, when I was in junior high, we had the mock trials, the big ones where the whole school got together.
Right.
And our case, I had to defend an eraser from erasing a pencil's mark. So, that was what I had to do. And there was another student there that was defending the pencil's right to leave the mark. So Gorsuch looks at these cases sometimes like what you would see in these hypotheticals. Where's the humanity? I thought there, isn't justice in the law sense? Isn't justice also about something more than just, I don't know. Shouldn't there be some humanity involved? Isn't that what they mean by making whole? That's just me. Okay, these are the issues we're going to be attending to today. I should mention that we would normally be meeting with Angie from Washington State, Angela Marks, but she had some last-minute commitments, that just couldn't get out of, and so she has to do that. That's okay. And so we'll take up the slack on the last half today in her absence. Well, the notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg tells Texas to stop ignoring science. Yeah, we'll see about that. Two black women who worked for Fox News file suit against the network claiming, quote, top-down racial harassment, unquote. Gee, I'm shocked, Wink. I don't know if that could that possibly have happened there? Yikes. And this just came up here just a few moments ago. The U.S. women's national team ends its boycott after securing an historic contract from USA Hockey. And so in Angela's absence, we're going to report on the last half on how forest protection can mitigate climate change. Oh, yes, your browsing history is now being sold to third-party vendors. And the GOP has a fear of the nuclear option over Gorsuch. They're getting a little skittish on it, Wink. I don't know. I mean, are Democrats known for, holding firm? Let's hope they do. Boy, oh boy. And all that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar and more. There's always more on the after show with that ever so fine fellow over there on the East Coast, and his name is Wink, and this guy all the way back over here on the West Coast, and my name is Justice. And we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish, in this specific, particular, and peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time, because who loves your baby?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprised Fox even has African-American employees, to be honest with you. Okay.
They were working in the payroll department. They put them behind like dark windows and bars.
Yeah.
Right. So when people get their checks, there's people. It's like handing lunch through the bars.
Right.
So it still fits the motif.
Oh yeah.
Say.
Yep.
But it does come on the heels of some blatant, how shall we put it, racism and sexism on their part. Yeah. I think that's probably succinctly the way that it would be put. Racist and sexist behavior from the top down. Yikes. Yeah, there's so much going on in the Russian story. I would suggest continue listening to Randy Rhodes, who comes up at 1 p.m. on the West Coast. So that's, 4 p.m. on the East Coast.
Yep.
And also Rachel Maddow. I think that they give pretty good, in a sense, PowerPoint presentations that are very engaging. And then, of course, they are drawing on voluminous and quite exhaustive investigative journalism. And, but boy, it's coming down, Wink. I mean, when you got Trump angry tweeting about Hillary Clinton's Uranium One deal, what the hell?
I saw that. Yep.
I mean, that's kind of like right up there with Pizzagate. Come on, man. But I guess it plays. And I could go on about, do we embrace or shun the Trump voter? And, we are seeing polls that do corroborate the intractability of that very concentrated base. We can look at it and say it's such a small percentage. It's always around a third.
Right.
But that's tens of millions of people.
Oh, yeah.
And you could say they're armed.
Right.
You could say that, and you might be correct. And so, a couple tens of millions of brown shirts in the street, even though they might be hunched over in walkers, they can still pack a punch, with a 9mm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they can probably still pick up a 9mm. It's not too heavy.
Nope.
Probably have it like on one of those fixed things on their walkers, so they don't even have to pick it up. It can just be mounted.
Right.
And, so one has to be concerned about that. I guess we could peel off a few here or a few there. But I think that whenever they start talking about liberals being evil murderers and we must be crushed, it means they're going to get on a killing spree. Don't they project?
Yeah.
I'd be hunkering down. You know, good thing we stopped
Alex
our
Jones kept he doubled down on Pizzagate essentially last night on the radio. He said, basically that you're sticking to the story and blah 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 blah. So I don't know. He didn't back off of that too much. So I have no idea. I think he's maybe going over the edge a little bit. But
they want to groove on the rubble.
Okay?
Yeah. They're convinced that it's got to all come crashing down. Well, while we're still within some cohesive order of existence, why don't we talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Yeah.
Her notoriousness is not amused. And this is by Ian Melheiser out of Think Progress. Texas cannot disregard the medical community standards when it assesses which inmates are intellectually disabled and therefore which inmates cannot be sentenced to death under the Constitution. A 5-3 Supreme Court announced this decision in Moore v. Texas in an opinion written by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Anthony Kennedy, a conservative with relatively moderate views on the death penalty, crossed over to vote with the courts for liberals. Justice Ginsburg's opinion is an affirmation that science trumps states' rights in at least a case like this, where a state appeared to invent a method of diagnosing intellectual disabilities that has little grounding in medicine or psychology. It's so hard not to jump in, but Texas is notorious for this. I mean, they put a guy to death who proclaimed his innocence. They said that he was like depressed about, not having a high paying job. I guess he was just like a truck. He had a pickup truck and he worked, whatever. And he was going to lose the ranch or the farm or some weird thing. Right. And so because of this, his only way out was to douse his home with his wife and kids in it and burn them up. Right. And there was a fire marshal that presented this science that corroborated what the accusation had been stated as. And the guy said, no, I was trying to save my family. I don't know. It was like wiring or something, right? And the fire marshal said, no, we have, this was a premeditated attack. And they put the guy to death. And later on, they found out that it was all junk science. And the state knew it was junk science. Interesting. Okay. 15 years ago in Atkins v. Virginia, the Supreme Court held that death is not a suitable punishment for a mentally retarded criminal. The Atkins opinion, however, has also contained a pretty substantial loophole. We don't use the term mentally retarded anymore, so it's a little jarring to see that. But 15 years ago, this is what it said in the opinion. So that loophole is we leave to the states the task of developing appropriate ways to enforce the constitutional restriction upon execution of sentences. Several states took this loophole as a license to invent methods of assessing which inmates are mentally retarded, an antiquated term for people with intellectual disabilities. In 2014's Hall v. Florida, however, the justices began to limit states' leeway to do so. The legal determination of intellectual disability is distinct from a medical diagnosis, Kennedy wrote in Hall, but it is informed by the medical community's diagnostic framework. Ginsburg's opinion in Moore expands on Hall's insight, explaining that adjudications of intellectual disability should be informed by the views of, wait for it, medical experts. Not how many marbles the patient can pull out of a jar and tell you how many they pulled out.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Right.
We're talking about actual science. Ginsburg's opinion involves the tragic case of Bobby James Moore, who has an IQ of about 70 and whose intellectual disability was apparent at a young age. At 13, Ginsburg writes, Moore lacked basic understanding of the days of the week, the months of the year, and the seasons. He could scarcely tell time or comprehend the standards of measure or the basic principle that subtraction is the reverse of addition. Moore's teachers frequently separated him from the rest of the class and told him to draw pictures. Then, after failing every subject in the 9th grade, Moore dropped out of high school. Cast out of his home, he survived on the streets eating from trash cans, even after 2 bouts of food poisoning. In 1980, Moore shot and killed a store clerk during a botched robbery. He was soon sentenced to die. Rather than following the current clinical standards used to assess whether Moore is intellectually disabled, Texas's highest criminal court relied on a mixture of outdated diagnostic manuals and subjective tests, such as whether those who knew Moore best during the developmental stage, his family, friends, teachers, employers, authorities, thought he was mentally retarded at the time, and if so, acted in accordance with that determination. So that's Texas determining that. As Ginsburg explains, the Texas court felt that granting persons with mild intellectual disability an exemption from the death penalty may not align with the consensus of Texas citizens on who should be exempted from the death penalty. Nevertheless, Ginsburg writes, mild levels of intellectual disability, although they may fall outside Texas's citizens' consensus, nevertheless remain intellectual disabilities, and states may not execute anyone in the entire category of the intellectually disabled offenders. It's a hard argument to make when you're saying, well, the people of Texas have barely IQ above 70 anyway, so come on.
Right.
That's a hard argument to make, I think. Texas cannot disregard scientific standards in the way that it did in the Moore case, and it certainly cannot do so in order to place a court's subjective view of public sentiment ahead of a constitutional right. So score a point for science, a point for science. Well, I would also say it's a point for democracy, because the tyranny of the minority and the tyranny of the majority are both constructs that we need to be on guard for, shouldn't we? And isn't both of those dynamics addressed? Certainly the tyranny of the majority, public sentiment, opinion, or the tyranny of the minority, like, couple of tens of millions of brown shirts in the street telling people what they can do and can't do. Oh boy, Mike, help me, please. Well, thank you, the notorious RBG.
Yeah.
This next article is by Aaron Corbett out of Raw Story. 2 black women filed a lawsuit on Tuesday against Fox News for racial discrimination they experienced while working at the news network. The New York Times reported. Uh-oh. Fake news. Wait, it's fake.
Gray lady.
So Tachana Brown and Tabressa Wright, who managed and coordinated the payroll department, accused Fox's former comptroller, Judith Slater, of top-down racial harassment. Brown and Wright allege in their case that Slater made comments calling black men women beaters and about black people wanting to cause physical harm to white people. The old thing about, black people are going to come and kill us in our beds and our slaves.
Yeah.
I'm all, no, they're going to kill you in your front yard when you're awake. Don't worry.
Right.
Idiots.
You'll be fully conscious. Don't worry about it.
You'll be fully conscious. Don't worry. They're not in your sleep. We promise. The women filed a suit in the state Supreme Court in the Bronx. Their lawyers, Douglas H. Wigder and Gene Christensen, said, "We are confident that the good men and women of the Bronx will hold Fox accountable for what we believe to be its abhorrent racist conduct, reminiscent of the Jim Crow era." So you know Fox is going to try to get this moved out of that jurisdiction. You know that right now. We can't get a fair trial with this jury pool. Can we go to London?
Right.
We have offices there. Can we go there? In a statement to Mediate, Fox News said, "We take any complaint of this nature very seriously and took the appropriate action in investigating and firing Ms. Slater within 2 weeks of this being brought to our attention. There is no place for abhorrent behavior like this at Fox News. We don't like it, within our own employee pool, but we sure like to do it out there on, when we're on camera." So I'm trying to make the connection here, right? There is no place for abhorrent behavior like this at Fox News. And then you got your talent in front of a camera making racist comments.
Yeah.
Almost like it was a strategy because It's been happening forever. And what these two employees that ran the employee or the payroll department are saying is that, it's systemic and endemic to the whole the whole company, everything. Okay, well, they fired the lady. Well, the lawsuit was filed the same day. Host Bill O'Reilly made a racist and sexist comment about California Representative Maxine Waters' hair, calling it her James Brown wig. You don't say that to Maxine.
Oh, man.
And it's not the first time Fox News has faced a discrimination lawsuit in the last year. CEO Roger Ailes was ousted in July of last year over a sexual harassment lawsuit. And O'Reilly was accused of a similar harassment. And that was after the loofah bar incident. Okay. I think the only wife beaters that they have at Fox News is Bill O'Reilly, who's been charged with that in his divorce lawsuit against his wife. Okay, well, projection be thy continence. Ooh. It's a little bit long, but let's get through it. This is by Lindsay Gibbs out of Think Progress. History has been made. 15 months after negotiations first began and 13 days after the U.S. women's national team first announced its boycott of the upcoming IIHF World Championships over unfair treatment and inequitable wages, the U.S. women's national team and USA Hockey have reached a monumental deal that provides the current players with livable wages and equitable resources, and that solidifies a bright future for the sport. It also ensures that the U.S. team will actually take the ice this weekend at the World Championships in Plymouth, Michigan, after training camp and an exhibition game against Finland were canceled because of the boycott. Whether or not the American women defend their title this weekend, this hard-fought contract makes clear they are already winners. Prior to this boycott, get this week. Prior to the boycott, the team was only earning $6,000 every 4 years. $1,000 a month for the 6 months before every Olympics. And USA Hockey was spending nothing on elite girls programs compared to the $3.5 million a year spent on elite boys programs. I don't know. Doesn't sound like good business to me. If you have like a market and then you realize I'm only really selling to half of it, and all I have to do is just put a little bit of money over for this other half, and I'll have so much more. It just is insane. As reported by Jonette Howard at ESPNW, the new 4-year deal increases the salaries of the U.S. women's national team players to about $70,000 a year. Oh, they get to be like boxers and checkers at Costco, maybe. Maybe Costco isn't making $70,000 a year, but that's close. So to me, that's pretty much in the middle class range. It's not upper class or maybe upper middle class a bit, maybe we'll say. But it's not like owning a 16-room mansion, 26 bathroom, place with a swimming pool in your dining room. Okay, good. And allows the players a chance to win performance bonuses based on their results at the World Championships and the Olympics. Additionally, U.S. Hockey will guarantee that each player on the national team, regardless of experience level, will receive a $2,000 a month training stipend and establish a compensation pool totaling $950,000 by the end of 4 years. USA Hockey will also provide the same travel arrangements, including per diems and insurance coverage to the women's team as it does to the men's team. Now, I'll cut to the chase here. The only reason this boycott worked is because of the solidarity among all the women players in hockey, even at the collegiate level. And I should mention also, too, is that the men's national team is going to boycott their championships and their season if the USA Hockey didn't join the 21st century in spite of Trump America.
Yeah. Very cool.
So it's got to, it's every women on all levels, and not just in hockey, by the way. And then the men's team also said, we're not going to play. And they stood in solidarity with the women. And that's how a union works.
Yep.
All right, let's get to our Jim Hightower break. We'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Co's community calendar, and then the last half. You're listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
We're hearing a lot these days about House Speaker Paul Ryan's 123-page legislative plan for Trump Care, the GOP's so-called replacement for Obamacare. In fact, we now learn that it's actually a displacement plan. 24 million Americans who are now insured would no longer get coverage. The premiums paid by senior citizens would be jacked up, and the benefits for practically everyone would be cut. But Ryan did make sure that one group with special needs will benefit from his legislative wizardry: the CEOs of giant insurance corporations. Understandably, none of the GOP lawmakers who've been loudly crowing about killing Obamacare have mentioned a little 6-line proviso hidden on page 67, discreetly titled Remuneration from Certain Insurers. In plain English, this gob of gobbledygook offers a tax subsidy that encourages insurance conglomerates to increase the pay of their top executives. Current tax law says insurers can pay as much as they want to top executives, but they can only deduct $500,000 per executive from their corporate taxes. Under Ryan's ripoff, however, we taxpayers would at least double and possibly quadruple the unconscionable salary subsidies we dole out to these enormously profitable corporations. The White House and GOP Congress proclaim that their replacement of Obamacare is, quote, the will of the people. Really? How many Americans really think that jacking up the pay of super-rich insurance chiefs is a proper use of our tax dollars? And I'd say a big majority of the people would think it immoral to steal life-saving health care benefits from working-class and poor families just to subsidize corporate elites who are already overpaid. This is Jim Hightower saying, if Republicans actually think their executive pay subsidy is the will of the people, why are they keeping it a secret from the people?
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back, and thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York 21 on the East Coast. Our crew are the ethereal creatures that reside in the cloud, whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio and thus by extension the After Show to span the globe, the solar system, and beyond. Most certainly beyond.
Heck yeah.
Okay, today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes Community Diary is facilitated by Forrester Bob, and he opens his diary today with favorite sayings. Like, do you have a favorite saying? Like, only fools and the dead never change an opinion.
There you go.
Never settle for minimums. Do you have anything, Wink, a favorite saying that you...
I don't think so. Not that I... Maybe somebody that at work would probably say, yeah, he does. He's got one or two, but I can't... Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, no.
Yeah, the one I live by is I believe in moderation.
There you go.
And a lot of it.
Yeah, and a lot of it. There you go.
And a lot of it. That's right. If you're going to do something, like experimentation.
Yep.
Well, I guess I didn't really look at this diary because we unfortunately don't have the actual calendar here. But let me just quickly go to here. And I should mention that Wisconsin Cossacks are forming a new group. And so get a hold of Chris the Colladem to begin that. And Navajo does maintain the event list. So if you have a group that you would like to form or an event that you would like to publicize to get Cossack members who may be in your neck of the woods and others, Cosmail Navajo, and she'll set you up for that. Okay, so New York City Cossacks will be meeting on Sunday, April 23rd. Because Navajo is in town, they'll be at Spitzer's Corner, 101 Rivington Street, in the Ludlow District at high noon. Cosmail Navajo to RSVP. Thinking Fella and Ojibwa have been organizing the third Epic Glacier National Park meetup held June 30th through July 2nd. Cosmail them to RSVP. And there is a diary at the Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Diary. A link to a very important diary about important planning details because, I don't know, doesn't sound like you're just going to hook up, Okay, we'll just hook up hot power right here. I think you'll probably want the 15 degree below zero sleeping bag. Not the 30 degree Coleman sleeping bag that you get at the sporting goods department next to the Coleman coolers. You know, the flannel, the ones with the flannel lining, they're nice.
There you go.
But they really only work when you put like a mummy bag inside of it.
Right.
And then maybe stuff it with a bunch of pine needles, between the Coleman flannel sleeping bag and your mummy bag.
You're
and
all
then,
set there. Yeah.
Then you might be able to survive.
Right.
Dried out moss too is a good one to line with. But pine needles save your life, but they kind of stick too. They are uncomfortable. And you'll be thinking, I'm uncomfortable, but at least I'm alive. Netroots Nation 2017 will be in Atlanta, of course, this year, and the Daily Co's annual Cheers and Jeers dinner will be occurring the night before the official opening of that. And, of course, it'll be on August 9th, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Cosmail Navajo. And that location will be determined by the amount of RSVPs that she gets. And that is your Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar for the 29th of March of 2017. It's only 2017, right? We're not in 2018 already, right?
Right.
God, it feels like it should be like the end of this guy's administration, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yep.
And I don't know, maybe the reason I feel that way is because not that 8 years or 4 years have passed. but he may be on his way out. You know, there are actual national GOP types that are floating the idea. They're not saying impeachment yet, but they don't think that he's going to last more than a year. I mean, I've heard like, oh yeah, he might not last his whole term, but I've been talking that he's probably not going to last more than a year.
No, I give him to the end of this year. That's about it. Yep.
Well, let's not pin our hopes on that, because that's sort of like when, we're ahead by 40 points, we don't need to play hard anymore.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And then you lose by 6 points.
Yep.
It
I've seen it done, unfortunately, yep.
Yeah, damn right. Okay, let's see here. Forest protection to mitigate climate change. And this is by way of Dana Smith from Alternet. It won't be solved without a massive increase in forest protection. I don't know. I kind of have been arguing this, I think, since even before the first Earth Day back in 1971. The month of March includes the International Day of Forest. It is an important time to note our window for avoiding catastrophic climate change is rapidly closing. I think that's closed already, to be honest with you. But let's not give up anyway. We will not solve the climate crisis without a massive increase in protection of forests around the world, including in our own backyard. We will not solve the climate crisis without a massive increase in the protection of forests around the world. Oh, I'm sorry. They didn't edit this properly and have doubled up some of their text. Okay, this year, the author here is releasing a report that they co-authored with Bill Muma, a renowned climate scientist from Tufts University, with one simple but urgent message. Forest protection needs to be a national priority in the fight against climate change. Through the release of The Great American Stand, U.S. Forests and the Climate Emergency, followed by a series of speaking engagements, Dr. Muma and I hope to elevate forests to the national climate spotlight and catalyze new action focused on protecting and restoring our nation's forests in ways that strengthen the resiliency and economic vitality of our most vulnerable rural communities. The U.S. produces and consumes more forest products than any country on Earth. Forest disturbance from logging in the southern U.S. alone is 4 times that of South American rainforests. The rate and scale of logging are significantly diminishing the extent to which our nation's forests would otherwise be removing and keeping carbon out of the atmosphere, protecting communities from floods, and stabilizing fresh water supplies. We cannot simply afford to ignore this critical fact any longer. You know something? You never think about this, but my sister and brother-in-law cleared out a bunch of blackberry briars along the banks of where Evans Creek goes into the Rogue River. You know, they have riparian rights and whatnot.
Right.
But you would be amazed how the roots of something just like a blackberry briar that's been growing forever can hold up a bank. Because they're like scrambling now to get some sort of root structure back in there because it's eroding quick. So areas that they had been able to garden on last year are now falling into the creek and then into the river.
Yeah, I mean that's the one of the functions of the brush along the bank, as they say. It's just to keep the bank there.
And then of course, and we're not talking necessarily just old growth stands of conifers,
right?
But just something that's been in the ground, for 30, 40 years.
Oh, hell yeah.
The root structure, hundreds of yards from a tributary.
Yep.
Spreads out so much and stabilizes so much.
Yep.
It's not only the taproot that goes down deep to an aquifer, but there's a lot of, lateral roots that come out and it stabilizes the tree. But in the process, webs out all that ground and it doesn't get eroded out. It's so something as simple as that, let alone, sucking carbon out of the air. So.
Right.
Okay, let's see. According to the latest EPA annual report that the current EPA Guy Pruitt hasn't been able to hide from people, because they're doing that. They're doing data dumps right now. Greenhouse gas emissions of our national forests annually remove an amount of carbon from the atmosphere equivalent to a mere 11 to 13% of emissions. This is roughly half that of the global average of 25%, and a mere fraction of what is needed to avoid climate catastrophe. 2016 study found that from 2006 to 2010, logging diminished the potential U.S. forest carbon sink by at least 35%. And you wonder if maybe that's another feature and not a bug, Wink.
Right.
I mean, I have to tell you, when we were kids, there were ad campaigns put on by the oil companies talking about climate change, in which the ice blockages in the North and South poles would melt and we'd live in this paradise and we'd terraform a new world. They bragged about it. And I have to say, what was one of the great, quests for explorers was to find the Northwest Passage. And there just wasn't one because it was frozen over.
Right.
But now we do. Now we have one.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
No problem now. Couldn't find it because it was frozen over. So let's just melt it away and then we'll have the Northwest Passage. And they got it. I don't know. Maybe it was just a joke on their part. Maybe they thought, we'll make a joke about some grandiose thing. And then, 10 years passes by, 30 years, 40. Go, wow, man. We got ourselves the Northwest Passage and a bunch of places we can get oil and burn it all up and melt it more. And then we'll turn this tundra into methane and it'll all blow up into a big conflagration. Oh, what the hell? Can we make money on it?
Indeed, yeah.
I don't know. Treating forest as an unlimited, renewable, extractable commodity that can support infinite growth in the forest products industry is an outdated business model that must yield to a new economic system that values standing forests and strengthens the resilience of our communities. We can solve the climate crisis by expanding forest protection while we rapidly drive down emissions from fossil fuels. You know what we need to do? No one's going to allow a whole forest to stand to suck carbon and pollutants out of the air.
Right.
But if we could mutate their genes somehow and make them into big turbines or whatever, make them look like a tool.
Yeah.
Then no problem. People will love it. I know I would. But I like the forest too.
Yeah, because it's
I'm telling you,
self-sustaining for the most part.
I really don't want to substitute. We'll just pull out all the carbon-sucking aspects of the great growth stands of conifers and whatnot, right? And we'll mutate that gene and we'll put it in what? I don't know, dichondra. And everybody can have a dichondra lawn. And they'll be able to have a little fake putting green on their dichondra lawn. And at the same time, suck out all the carbon out of the sky, and we'll be all happy. Oh, no, yeah. I don't want to give up my high-growth, aging conifer stands for dichondra. Please don't. That was one of the culture shocks I had when I moved from Oregon to Southern California. People had dichondra front lawns, and my mom would go out there and sweep it. It was easier to sweep than to rake, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
But no one swept their front lawns until we got into town. What are these hillbillies from the mountains in Oregon doing? We came from the valley. We had a place in the mountains, but come on, we came from the valley. What are you talking about? Because it was easier to sweep the dichondra than rake it. Try it sometime. You'll see. Tears it up. Let's just sweep it. Okay, where are we here? Oh my God, that's right, for sale. Oh God, I love the Republicans. While we're all concerned about the Russians declaring an act of war,
Right.
they declared an act of war, and we are now at war with them, and we have to wrap our heads around that. What are the Republicans doing? I don't know. It's almost like war profiteering, you'd think. This is out of Ars Technica by John Brodkin. The U.S. House of Representatives voted yesterday to eliminate ISP privacy rules. And Aaron Swartz is coming back, and they're going to make a new Ghostbusters. He's going to be like the big Pillsbury Doughboy, and he's going to crush you. And if he doesn't, he better. The White House issued, the legislation to kill the rules now heads to Donald Trump for his signature or veto.
Right.
Yeah, right. The only way he can make an effective enemies list is to make sure that people's keystrokes haven't been saying TRUMPFU.
Exactly.
He's going to have a bot, and it's going to look for anybody putting in TRUMPFU. The White House issued a statement today supporting the House's action. See, there you go. And saying that Trump's advisors will recommend that he sign the legislation. You mean Bannon? Stephen Miller? That would make the death of the Federal Communication Commission's privacy rules official. I guess that's called deconstructing the institutions. Deconstructing, what is it called? The deep state, deconstructing the bureaucratic state, the administrative, deconstructing the administrative state. Okay. The rules issued by the FCC last year would have required home internet and mobile broadband providers to get consumers opt-in consent before selling or sharing web browsing history, app usage history, and other private information with advertisers and other companies. I actually wrote my ISP and asked, can I buy the browsing history of a specific person in the White House, or do I have to buy the histories of all of them?
Right.
And is it cheaper to buy one, or is it cheaper to buy all? They haven't got back to me yet.
Yeah, they're still groving over that. Yeah.
Republicans argue that the FTC should regulate ISPs' privacy practices instead of the FCC. But the resolution passed on Tuesday eliminates the FCC's privacy rules without any immediate action to return jurisdiction to the FTC, which is prohibited from regulating common carriers such as ISPs and phone companies. If Trump signs the resolution to eliminate privacy rules, ISPs won't have to seek customer approval before sharing their browsing histories with and other private information with advertisers. Hi, this is a Trump organization. No, we're not the Trump government. No, we're an advertiser. Yeah. We're curious about people's habits. Yeah, we'll pay you. Wouldn't that be great if the ISPs get into a big lawsuit because the Trump organization won't pay the final bill? They want to negotiate it down, to some fraction of a cent on the dollar, that kind of a thing. Like Trump always did with his contractors.
Oh, yeah.
Then we'll see some changes here in our favor. Republicans argue that the FTC Commission should regulate the ISP's privacy practices. Okay. The House vote was 2015 to 205, with most Republicans voting to eliminate privacy rules and all Democrats voting to preserve them. Well, that's good. The Senate vote last week was 50-48, with lawmakers voting entirely along party lines. So we couldn't even peel off a senator or two a week. That sucks.
Right.
I have a simple question. What the heck are you thinking? Representative Michael Capuno, Democrat of Massachusetts, said in a debate on the House floor, what is in your mind? Why would you want to give up any of your personal information to a faceless corporation for the sole purpose of them selling it? Give me one good reason why Comcast should know my mother's medical problems.
Right.
Because an insurance company is going to want to know whether they really want to cover her. Isn't that it? And you know how all those old grannies are like totally, trying to game the system. And you can tell because they've gone on MD.com.
Right.
And asked about, Walmart eyeglass purchases. So they're going blind.
I don't think most of these senators even have a freaking clue what a browser is or, some of this other, techno stuff involving computers. They probably just, it sounds like a good idea. Let's vote for that.
Capuno said that ISPs can discover customers' medical conditions by seeing what illnesses and drugs they search for on the internet. Just last week, I bought underwear on the internet. Why would you want to know what size I take or the color? Well, I don't know. If you're buying women's clothes in your size, it might say something about what you like to wear, doesn't it? I know. I always made note of that when people came into the store and... Never mind. So I think, though, that it's not just the advertising industry that stands to gain by this. Business is doing it. Well, of course, on the other hand, I don't know. Do we really think the government isn't like measuring our keystrokes right now to make sure that we're not, planning some sort of catastrophe? I mean, I hope so in that sense. If it could be done without trampling all over people's constitutional rights.
Yep.
Do we really make judgments about people's behavior by their browsing history? Facial recognition software erroneously cites black men of a certain age as guilty more than they are. For instance, it's fallible. We're putting our trust in algorithms that have been programmed by the biases, bigotries, lack of world experience of the programmers who programmed it.
Right.
Okay. Well, yes, the GOP is getting skittish about the nuclear option. Democrats have been holding firm on Gorsuch, and it seems to be working here. What's good for the goose is good for the gander kind of attitude. They hate it. We are the destroyers of civilization because we have learned to say no now, Wink. They do this every time, you know? And they're going to try to sucker us in and say, oh, well, just give a little here. And then what that little is like a Scalia or worse, right? Right. And then when it comes time, they go, oh, well, we're sorry. We can't give you a Supreme Court appointment because it's within the last 2 years of your term.
Right.
Well, it was 1 year the last time. Yeah, well, that's how negotiations work, isn't it? You give a little here, then you give a little there. Next thing you know, you're living on a postage stamp and they mailed you away. Okay. We got over hump day. That means we're on the downward slide to the weekend. That means we'll come back here tomorrow, same time, same station for thank God it's Jova D.
Yeah. Yep.
This Thursday is truly the gateway to the weekend. But you know what? We still have time to rant and rave today because tonight at midnight on the East Coast, 9 p.m. on the West Coast, you can jibber your jabber for 2 hours with Wink.
Yep. Yep.
And you should.
Yep.
I mean, who knows what Spicer's going to be up to now, right? In fact, I heard this argument that, that you just don't know what's in Spicer's heart. Yeah, that's true. But we know exactly what the Effie's doing.
Right. Right.
Okay. So there's that. You never know what's going to come up in the press conference. President's already been angry tweeting about, I don't know. There's not enough colanders to go around to put on people's heads now, Wink. It sucks. All right. So I should get out of here. That's the bell. It says, let's wind this down. So we got some great content once again. Just reminding you, Randy Rhodes coming up after Democracy Now!, which comes up after Hartman. And Tom Hartman will be coming up at about 6 minutes after the hour. And in the interim, we'll be listening to Forme Rouge by the Metropolitan Jazz Affair. Why don't you stay listening to Networks Radio 24/7, 365? Why? Because who loves you, baby? Oh, and one other thing, as Columbo would say. Wink, I'll see you on the other side.
All right, we're out.